morning, LC. I'm excited to be back with you guys this morning. I was out of town preaching last weekend, but man, I'm good to be home. Everybody loves coming home when you're gone, and so I'm excited to be here with you guys. Now, I don't know about you, but because I was gone, I got online and watched last week's message where Pastor Andrew taught us about worry. It was so good. The content was so good. Last week, it was encouraging me about how sometimes in life the enemy can sit on our shoulder and start to create fear to creep into our mind, and we begin to get worried, and that worry chokes us out. So if you missed last week's message where Pastor Andrew taught, please get online and listen to that message. Or if you've missed any of this series, we'd encourage you to go on, check it out, and feed yourselves a little and grow in your relationship with God so that you can overcome some of these battles that we have to navigate in the MindField. Now today, I've been looking forward to this particular message in our series MindField for weeks, even before we started the series, because I know what we're talking about today is a big deal. It's an issue that we all face, and we've all started facing when we were young, all throughout our lives. Today we're talking about how to navigate the MindField and not get blown up in insecurity. Everyone say insecurity. And the truth is all of us battle insecurity, no matter who you are, no matter how much money you have or how good looking you are or the relationships that you have, no matter who you are, all of us battle insecurity. And the truth is that insecurity is one of the greatest weapons that the devil uses to halt the progress in our life. Remember, we talked about how the enemy, he wants to lay out landmines in the minefield, that when we step on them, they blow up and then they halt our forward progress, so we're not able to accomplish the things that God has called us to do. And if we allow insecurity into our mind, then it will stop us from progressing. It'll stop us from accomplishing the things that God has called us to. And so the longer that those things are in our mind, they quickly become associated with who we are. And instead of us just feeling like we're insecure, we then become insecure, and it's now a part of our personality. It becomes a part of our makeup, and it gets caught in us, where we become insecure, and we be feeling we're not good enough, and like we can't accomplish the things that we want to do in life. And you know, we've learned that the brain is very efficient at thinking things, that our brain literally builds new neurological pathways, that when you think about something enough, your brain builds new pathways to get you there faster. So the more you think about something, the easier it is to think that thing. And so if you've been thinking you're not good enough for a decade, or for 20 years or 30 years, if you've been thinking you're not pretty, you've been thinking you're not smart, you've been thinking that you're not liked, then what happens is your brain helps you think that thing. And it becomes easier to become insecure. But we have to make a decision and say, I'm going to stop taking this pathway through the woods, remember? I'm going to allow this pathway that I've created in my mind to think that I'm not good enough. I'm going to let that denature. I'm going to stop going that way and allow God to close that thing up. You see, insecurity can become ingrained in who we are. And we all live one of three ways. We live one of three ways. We either live insecure, everyone say insecure. We live falsely secure, say falsely secure. Or number three, we live secure in God, say secure in God. We live one of three ways. And for many of us, we live insecure. We live our lives in a state of insecurity. And what happens is we compensate for our insecurity through dialing up or dialing down our personality. All of us, it's like we have a big dial in our heart, and we can dial our personality up or we can dial our personality down. You see, all of us, God has given us a God-given personality. For those of you with multiple children, you know that from a really young age, you can start to learn a kid's personality, right? So from birth, God's given us a personality, and then through nature and nurture, we develop those personalities. And so depending who you are, you manage your insecurity differently. And so for some of us, when we feel insecure, we dial our personality down, and we become quiet and timid and afraid and insecure and overwhelmed, and then we do our best to hide away from life. We become a wallflower. We don't want people to see us. We don't want people to look at us. And when we live our life this way, that's how we're managing our insecurity. Now, that can be a part of our personality, because we're not really a loud, boisterous person, but what we do is when we get insecure is we get really quiet. When we're in a group of people, we don't talk. You know, we just come in and find our seat, and then we leave, and we don't make a big show. But then there's other of us that we turn the dial the other direction. And when we get insecure, and when we get overwhelmed, instead of getting quiet and timid and alone, what we do is we turn the dial up. And we get loud, and we get dominant, and we get powerful. Can you tell what my personality is? And so what we do is we turn into this macho man, right? And we want to say, I am not insecure, but I am powerful. But no matter your personality, we deal with insecurity in one of two ways. And so for me, if you could look back at my life, like Ghost of Christmas Past style, right? Go back into my life when I was a kid, you would say Truston has been confident his whole life. But the truth is, what I was really good at managing the dial. And so the moments that I walked around dominant, the truth was those are the moments I was most insecure. And so whether you're here with me, or whether your personality is to go over here and hide and be shy and be afraid, no matter where you are, that issue needs to be dealt with. And I'm not sure which one is worse. I'm not sure if it's worse to be quiet and go through life afraid, or if it's worse to go through life powerful and dominant. Because see, they both have negative consequences. If your personality is to be very shy and quiet and timid, then who you hurt is yourself. Because you live this way, you don't engage in life. You don't accomplish the things that God has called you to do. And so years go by without you progressing. And so you hurt yourself. But if you have this kind of personality where you get big and loud and powerful, you're not hurting yourself because you're still advancing yourself, but who you are hurting are those around you. Because you want to have this authority that you really don't have, what you do is you begin to climb on top of other people's emotions and push them down to raise yourself up. So I don't know which one is worse. Probably wherever you are, you think the other one's worse, right? And if you're over here, you're going, that guy's a jerk. And if you're over here going, man, that person needs to gain some confidence, right? No matter where you are, you think the other's worse, but the truth is, wherever you are, it needs to be dealt with. Because God wants you to not be secure in all of these external things. He wants you to find confidence in who He created you to be. You see, we can find false security. So whether we're timid or whether we're loud, we find our false security in a couple external things, like maybe money. We think that if I can just surround myself with enough money, surround myself with enough things, if I can get the right house and the right car and the right clothes, and I can marry a man who puts a big enough ring on my finger, right? If I can do all of these things and surround myself with these finances, then I'll insulate myself from the insecurity I feel in myself. But who knows that there's always somebody with more money? No matter how rich you are, there's always somebody with more money. There's an Arab sheik somewhere who has more money, I promise, right? That's just how it is. There's always somebody who has more. Or we try to insulate ourselves with relationships. Well, if I can just be with this group of people, this started way back in junior high, remember? If I can just hang out with the cool kids, if I can sit at that table during lunch, and the same thing happens as adults, y'all. We're no different than we were as kids. It's the same insecurities. And if we can surround ourselves with the right people and the right groups of friends, and if I can smile bright enough and post it on Instagram, everybody will think that I'm important. Everyone will think that I'm confident about myself. But the truth is you're just trying to guard yourself through false security, or maybe through looks. If I can look a certain way. If I can get in shape, if I can get a little work done, right? If I can get my hair dyed, I don't know, right? If I can do all of these things, I'm stepping on some toes, right? If I can do all of these things, then what we can do is we can insulate ourselves from our insecurity through our looks. But the truth is gravity will always catch you. Sister Sag is coming, right? And brother Flab is not far behind, right? They're chasing you down. They're chasing you down. And no matter how hard you work to try to have your external appearance provide your security, then there's going to be a point where you find yourself insecure because there's always someone more beautiful. There's always somebody in better shape. I don't care if you have a six-pack, you're going to meet a guy with an eight-pack. It's just how it works. There's always somebody who looks better. Now, I'm not saying don't take care of yourself, right? I'm not saying if you want to get some work done, do whatever. Do your thing, girl, right? Like, it's all good. You know, the Bible says that this is the temple of the Holy Spirit, and everything needs a new coat of paint every once in a while. So, like, I'm not saying that we need to walk around looking sloppy, but what I am saying is that we don't need to find our confidence in just what we look like, but we need to find our confidence in what God says about us. Because what happens is because there's always somebody with more money or more friends or better looks, we get into this game of comparison. And so the devil tries to trick us into finding our confidence based on the people around us and how we compare ourselves to others. And can I tell you that comparison, it blows up our confidence. Comparison is tormenting. Comparison is tormenting. Because you can think that you've arrived. You can think that you're accomplished. You can think that you've got everything in place to find yourself at a place of security. But then when you compare yourselves to other people, it blows you up. You can't find value on a horizontal plane, but on a vertical plane. We can't compare ourselves here because there's always going to be somebody who has something better. So I want to show you a little bit how this works. So I'm going to need some people to help me. I need Mark Ray. Mark, will you come up and help me? I need Mark to come. I saw Jason White. Where's Jason? Jason, come up here. I need Jason to come up here and help me. Come right over here. I saw John Winkleman. Come on, John. I need John to help. John's like, oh man, I'm in trouble now. Come on up here. Here, Aaron, come up here, and Andrew, come stand up here. Just stand up here in a row. So here's what we do. Mark, stand all the way over here. So here's what happens, is we go through life all the way over. So what happens is we go through life in comparing ourselves. And so we walk around, we go to work, and we go to church, and we go to places, and we compare ourselves to people. And so I see Mark Ray in the lobby, and I'm talking with Mark Ray in the lobby. And I'm comparing myself to him, and I'm feeling like a junior high child. And I'm thinking, I'm 5'10" with shoes on, and Mark is a giant human being. So you know what that means? As a man, I feel like a loser. I helped a guy move one time, and Mark was there helping us move. And if you ever have to, well, I shouldn't say that, but if you have a lot of money and you want to pay Mark Ray to help you move, he can pick up anything. He can do anything. He's like a bulldozer of a human being. And so I stand next to Mark Ray, and I feel insignificant. Or maybe I'm interacting with Aaron. You know Aaron can fly an airplane? If the apocalypse happens, he can escape. We're all going to die. He's going to be on an airplane. So I interact with Aaron, and then I feel like a loser. Jason, he's got his little muscles going, right? And he rides a motorcycle, right? And he makes me feel, I've been to his house is bigger than mine, so he probably makes more money than I do, and so that can make me feel like a loser, right? Or Andrew, dude, Pastor Andrew, he preached last week. I listened to his message, and he had that rope illustration. You remember? It was so good. And now I've got to follow up the rope illustration. Like, are you serious? And so it makes me feel like a loser. Or John, this dude has all kind of cars. He's a car collector. He's got all these, what do you got, a Barracuda or something?
Duster.
A duster. And so, yeah, see? And you see how he says it? A duster. And I'm like, I'm so mad. And so, like, I see him, and I see all the things that he's got and how cool he is. He's done the Baja race, like racing trucks in the desert. And I'm like, man, I'm just a loser. And so what happens is when we get caught in comparison, is we walk through life, I'm a loser, 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 I'm a loser. And that's what we do. And the enemy wants us, thanks guys, the enemy wants us to look at all the people in our lives and compare what he's given us in contrast to what he's given them. And can I tell you something? That's not fair. Yeah. It's not fair. Right. It's not fair to me to look at all of these positive attributes that other people have in contrast to the things that I have, and then I call myself a loser. You see, insecurity is rooted in comparison. Right. It's where it's rooted. It's where its foundation is. It's where its roots are down. Insecurity is rooted in comparison. And you see, I've learned this. My blender on my counter that I make smoothies in, my blender, it isn't insecure that it can't toast bread. My blender isn't insecure it can't toast bread. My television hanging on the wall, my TV, isn't insecure that I don't drive it to work. My toothbrush doesn't feel bad about itself that I don't use it to mow my lawn. Right? You want to know why? Because those things don't have creation envy. My blender sits on its counter perfectly content that it was created to be a blender. It doesn't look over the toaster and say, oh, that toaster has heating elements, and it's made of stainless steel, and it's so fancy. He uses it for breakfast for him and his kids, and I just sit over here, and he only makes a smoothie every once in a while, right? They don't do that. They don't do that. They have no creation envy. But for us, what we do is we envy other pieces of creation. We look at the things and the other attributes and the other gifts, talents, and abilities that God has given other people, and we say, if only I had that. And we become insecure because we think that what we have doesn't match up. Now, I've read the scripture before here at Living Church. I've preached about it a couple of months ago out of Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, but it says this, for we are God's masterpiece. Everyone say masterpiece. He created us anew in Christ Jesus, so we can do good things he planned for us long ago. God calls us his masterpiece. But we get frustrated that we're a blender and not a toaster. We get mad we're a toothbrush and not a lawnmower. But God is saying, hey, it doesn't matter. You're my masterpiece. How I made you is for a reason. I made you that way intentionally and for a purpose. And I've learned in my life that it's in the doubt of my masterpiece-ness that insecurity is birthed. Yes, I just made up a word, masterpiece-ness, right? It's in the doubt of our masterpiece-ness that insecurity is birthed. Because when we think that we aren't a masterpiece, when we think that everybody else is a masterpiece, but I'm a loser, then we find ourselves living in insecurity. We begin to doubt our masterpiece-ness for a couple reasons. We start to feel like we don't measure up, like we aren't good enough for a couple reasons. One is because of words others spoke over us, right? Yeah. Throughout the series, we've been talking about how the devil plays the long game. Right. And so how we now find ourselves insecure as adults because when we were 8 years old, we got picked last for kickball, right? And so how he plays the long game. But you know, what the enemy uses is he uses the words of other people to fertilize our insecurity, to help us feel more insecure. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 18, it says, the words of the reckless pierce like a sword. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me, isn't true. Right? That's not true. People say hurtful things to us, and it pierces us like a sword, is what the Bible says, and it hurts us. And so maybe somebody has spoken negative words over you, and now the devil is sitting on your shoulder, echoing that thing over and over and over and over again. The words of the reckless pierce like a sword. Maybe your mom or dad said something to you that still echoes in your mind, and it plays on your insecurity. They told you that you're worthless, they told you you weren't good enough, or they told you you were a mistake, or they told you you were dumb or stupid or ugly. They told you something that now as an adult, years later, you still remember the thing that was spoken over you. Maybe for you, it was a brother or a sister. Maybe you had the brother that was like the star on the sports field, or the sister that was the beauty queen, and you just felt like you didn't compare. You just felt like you didn't match up. Or maybe you had a great relationship, but they said something in a fight one time that you just keep playing over and over in your head. Can I tell you what we need to do is we need to stop repeating it and we need to delete it. We need to say, no, I don't want this thought in my mind anymore. Maybe for you, it was a teacher or a coach. You know, I had teachers all through my whole educational career, my whole education telling me that I wasn't enough. Trust me, you're just not good at this. You just shouldn't. You're not going to be able to accomplish the things that you're saying you want to accomplish. And you have people speak negative words into your life, and you start to view yourself in that way. Maybe for you it's a boss or a coworker. You have an employer, somebody that you worked for, that speaks venom over you because they're just trying to be macho man and they're really insecure, and so they're trying to make you collateral damage for their confidence. And so now you're reeling in insecurity because of the words that they spoke over you. Or maybe it's a husband or a wife or an ex-husband or an ex-wife, and somebody got mad at you during an argument, and during argument they started shooting you full of holes verbally, and you're still bleeding. You're still allowing the thing that the enemy used to hurt you, and those things are echoing in your mind. Or maybe it was even a son or a daughter. Maybe you're a mom or a dad, and your son or your daughter said something to you that was really hurting, and they didn't understand the situation. They don't understand why you did what you did, but now you feel like you were a bad mom or you were a failure as a father because of the words that somebody else spoke over you. We need to be careful about the words spoken over us. So if I could quote the ultimate macho man, other than Randy Savage, but the ultimate macho man is my friend, my man Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know what Arnold said? He said this. He said, it doesn't matter what they call you, it only matters what you answer to. It doesn't matter what they call you. And so throughout life, people are going to call us a lot of bad things. They're going to say a lot of things about what we aren't and how we're not good enough, but what we have to do is make the decision to not answer to it. So if they called you a loser, don't answer to it. If they told you you're insignificant or not smart, don't answer to it. If they told you that you're ugly, don't answer to it. It doesn't matter what they call us, because what we have to do is not find our security in external things. We have to find our confidence and our security in who God says we are. And He says that we are His masterpiece. So our masterpiece-ness is questioned through the words of others, but sometimes over the words we speak over ourselves. You know, I would never let someone speak to me how I speak to myself. I would beat me up if someone talked to me how I talk to myself. But what happens is people speak negative words over us, they become ingrained in our personality, and now instead of them calling us stupid, we call ourselves stupid. And we begin to speak insecurity over our own lives. You see, we play the lies of others and we start repeating those lies over ourselves. And we give ourselves a label, and labels are powerful. When you give yourself a label, that's a powerful thing. Let me show you how powerful labels are. I'm going to show you. We all know these people's label. I'm going to say their name, you tell me their label. Ready? Dora the Explorer. See? Bob the Builder. Right? We all know their labels. Conan the Barbarian. Buffy the Donald the Someone said Trump. Someone said Trump. I guess that's true. Donald the Trump. Donald the Duck. Last one. Last one is this. Labels are powerful. Winnie the Pooh. Now, I don't know what a poo is, but Winnie apparently is one, right? And so these people, they have a label that's attached to them. Now, I don't want you to do it. This is a hypothetical question. But if I were to say your name, what label would you attach to yourself? Loser, stupid, worthless, mistake, abandoned, failure. We attach these labels to ourselves, and then we go through lives viewing ourselves as that thing. Dora is an explorer. That's what she does. It's who she is. But we attach these labels to ourselves, and they hurt us in our lives. Labels we attach to ourselves can hold us back from reaching our full potential. They stop us from reaching our full potential because God's called us to something great, but we refuse to get there because of the label we've attached to ourselves. So we have to get rid of those labels. You know, anytime we've taken our kids to the zoo, one animal I have to go and see are the elephants. I love elephants because they're big, they're powerful, they're massive, they're mighty. They're the largest land mammal on earth. An elephant can flip a car over with its trunk. It could put his head against a wall and push over a building. Elephants are powerful. But did you know that any elephant born into captivity can be held into place with a simple little wooden stake? That the zookeeper can take this stake when the elephant's a baby and is impressionable and is weak, and he can take this stake and he can pound it into the ground, and he can tie a rope around the top of this stake and tie that rope to the foot of the elephant, and the elephant as a child can't move. He walks to his limit, he remembers the stake, and he can't go beyond that point. But you've heard it said that elephants never forget, right? They have a great memory. You know who else does? We do. Yeah. We remember the words that have been spoken over us because words are powerful. And we remember these people that have spoken negative words, and what happens is we get shackled to them. So the elephant grows up, and he becomes powerful, and he could flip over a car and push over a building, and he's strong, but yet he remembers the thing that held him captive. And even though he has the power to rip it out of the ground and to find freedom, he doesn't because of the label that's been attached to him. He was born into captivity, and so now this label holds him hostage. And can I tell you something? We've been born into a fallen world. We've been born into captivity of sin. All of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And the devil does everything that he can to attach a negative thing to us. So the question is, what's your stake? Maybe for you, it's worthlessness. Maybe you feel like you're worthless, or somebody spoke that you are worthless, and so that's been pounded into your life, and this idea that you don't have any value, it stops you. Or maybe for you, it's a mistake. Maybe your mom or dad said, you know what, you're a mistake. We didn't want to have you anyways. And so now you live your life thinking, you know what, I wasn't created on purpose, so that means that I must not have a purpose. Or maybe for you, it's failure. And a mistake that you made, you failed. You failed in business, you failed in a relationship, you failed in some aspect. And so now this thing that was a one-time momentary problem is now holding you back from succeeding every area of your life. Maybe for you it's the word unimportant. You compare yourselves to the people around you that you think are making a difference. They're doing great things. They're accomplishing a lot. And what am I doing with my life? So you feel unimportant. Maybe for you it's addicted. Maybe you have an addiction in your life that you just can't get over. And so you found victory before, but then for some reason you just go back and keep shackling yourself to that thing. And it's like you can't get beyond that in your relationship with God. And the enemy is trying to blow you up in the minefield and stop your forward progress through that addiction. Maybe for you it's the word poor. Maybe you look around at the people in your life and they have more money than you, they have more assets than you, they have more things that you have, and so you've labeled yourself poor. And because you don't have one thing, you can't do something that God has called you to do. Or maybe it's stupid. This was a big one for me. Is because there's areas in your life that you think that you're not as good as other people. You know, I can't spell. I joke about that every once in a while. And so because I can't spell, for years I thought I was a stupid person. But can I tell you something? I'm not stupid. but I can't spell. I still can't spell, but that doesn't mean that I have to identify myself as stupid. And maybe you're not good at math, or maybe you're not good with this, or you're not good with that, but that doesn't mean that you can shackle yourself because of one area that you're not good at, or maybe for you it's the word sinner. Maybe you have some sin in your life. Maybe you have given yourself away sexually to some people, so now you identify yourself as someone who is used. Or maybe you have some other things that you just can't find freedom in, and so instead of calling yourself new and redeemed, you call yourself sinner. Maybe it's the word weak. Maybe you just think that you're not powerful enough. Maybe you think that you're ugly. You don't like how you look. You don't like your body shape. You don't like your skin. You don't like your complexion. You don't like something. Maybe for you, it's abandoned. Maybe you got left. Maybe your parents left you. Maybe a spouse left you. And because of that, you feel like, well, that person didn't love me, so now no one's going to love me. Or maybe it's awkward. Maybe you just can't have good social interaction, you don't know what to say, and so you've identified yourself as awkward. You see, what the devil wants to do is he wants to take one of these stakes, and he wants to pound it into the ground, and he wants to get you to think that it has power over you. But can the elephant pull the stake out of the ground? Yes. But you know where the battle is? It's in his mind. It's not in his body. It's not in what God has given him. It's in his mind. And he's shackled to something that the enemy has used to try to stop his forward progress. Labels we attach to ourselves are powerful. Every new challenge brings the potential of new insecurities. Every challenge that we face in life brings new insecurities. Here's what that means. Maybe one of these was you at one season of life and you got over it. But every new season that you step into brings potentially new insecurities. So if you were never married, and then you get married, you have this new potential to be insecure in, am I a good husband or wife? If you never had children, you never had the insecurity of, am I a good mother, until you had children. If you get a new job that has new responsibilities, you were never able to even be insecure in that. So it's not about overcoming one insecurity, because more stakes are going to pop up. As we go through life, the enemy's going to try to attach more things to us and slow us down, no matter what's coming in life. So all throughout the Bible, there are men and women who battled insecurity. And I don't have time to preach on all of them. I wish I did, but y'all would be like, dude, we got to go eat lunch. So I want to just talk about a couple people in the Bible that battled these exact same things, that battled these exact same insecurities. There's a guy named Jeremiah. Jeremiah was assigned by God to be a prophet, to be a mouthpiece, to be a vocal powerhouse for God. But in Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 6, here's what he says to the Lord. He says, "Alas, sovereign Lord, I said, I don't know how to speak, and I am too young." So Jeremiah, he says, God, I know you've called me, but you can't use me because I don't know how to speak, I don't talk well, and I'm too young. And then later in verse 8, he says, I'm afraid of their faces, meaning like when everyone's looking at you, it can be a little intimidating. When everyone's face is looking at you, it can be intimidating sometimes. And so he said, I'm weak, I'm young, and I'm afraid of their faces. He said, I am overwhelmed in this process. But then look at what God says in verse 5. He says to Jeremiah, he says, before I formed you, everyone say formed. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. So the first thing is that God formed him. God formed him. You know what that means? It means that God framed him and fashioned him to be exactly what he wanted to be. And God formed you in your mother's womb, and he framed you. He built you. He put within you the things that you need to accomplish the things that he has called you to do. And after he put the foundation, he then fashioned all the different pieces through your experiences and your life and the good things and the bad things, and he fashioned you into who you are for a purpose. God knew the assignment he had for you, and he built you to accomplish it. God called me to do this, so he built me to do what I'm doing. And he called you to do something, and he built you to do what you're doing. So don't look at my giftings and say, well, I could never do that. You're right, you're not me. But I can't be 6'8". I can't accomplish that no matter what I do. I can't become what I am not. So we have to be happy in who we are and confident who God formed us to be, and then operate in those gifts. You see, the scripture goes on and it says that God knew him. He formed him, and he knew him. God knew the good, the bad, and the ugly. He knew all the faults and the failures. He knew what Jeremiah was going to be about. He knew his personality, who he was going to become, but yet he still chose him. And then it says that he set him apart and appointed him. Everyone say appointed. You know, God's appointed you to do great things. He's appointed you. He has given you a position to fill. The Bible has called us his ambassadors. You know who an ambassador is? He's somebody that is picked to be a representative. So he's saying, this person is my representative. So if God calls you an ambassador, his representative, if he has positioned you, then we should have confidence in that. Right. And so if he's calling you an ambassador, walk tall. Right. Not macho man, not wallflower, but walk tall and confident and know that God has created you for a purpose. But it didn't stop with Jeremiah. There's another guy named Gideon. Everyone say Gideon. There's another guy in the Bible named Gideon, and Gideon battled insecurity. Judges chapter 6, verse 11, it says, Gideon was threshing wheat in the winepress to keep from the Midianites. That's their enemy. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. And then Gideon's next words are, pardon me, Lord? So the angel comes and says, you are a mighty warrior. And Gideon says, hold up, wait. Pardon me, Lord, what did you call me? And then Gideon goes around and talks about how the Midianites, the enemies, are so big and powerful, and about how, God, why haven't you dealt with this yet? He starts blaming God, but then God's response is unbelievable. He goes on, and the Lord turned to him and said, go in the strength that you have. Gideon again says, pardon me, Lord. Gideon replied, but how can I save Israel? Listen, my clan is the weakest, and I am the least in my family. And then God said, don't worry, I'm going to be with you. So Gideon starts telling God the labels that have held him back. I'm the weakest. I'm the most insignificant. And you're calling me mighty warrior. But yet I view myself as weak. You see, we have to view ourselves in the way that God views us. God has a name for you that's beyond the name you have for yourself. Hello? God has a name for you beyond the name that you have for yourself. So maybe this is your name, but God has a different name for you, and it's mighty warrior. God speaks to things that weren't as though they were, and then they become. Yes. He went to David while watching sheep and called him a king before he killed the giant. And he showed up to Gideon afraid in a wine press threshing wheat. He's in a basement making dinner. That's what he's doing because he's afraid. And so he's hiding in the basement, but yet God shows up on the scene and calls him mighty warrior. He spoke to what wasn't as though it was, and it became, but they had to listen. And in your life, God has a name for you that's greater than the name you have for yourself. So stop walking in insecurity. Stop walking in fear. Stop walking in intimidation, whether a wallflower or a macho man. Stop walking in that and live in the security that God has for you. But there's one other guy that I have to talk about that understood insecurity, and that's Moses. Y'all know Moses? Moses, right? Moses is an amazing leader. He accomplished great things, but did you know that he's probably the greatest example we have in biblical history of somebody who had insecurity? I don't have time to read it. You can read it in Exodus chapters 3 and 4. Both those chapters are this interaction. But I just want to read to you the questions that Moses posed to God. Listen to what he says. He says, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring Israelites out of Egypt? Who am I? Then he said, what should I even tell them? Then he said, what if they don't listen to me? What if they don't believe me? Then he stole a line from Gideon and he said, pardon your servant, Lord, but I've never been eloquent. Neither in the past nor since you've spoken to me, I am slow of speech and tongue. Moses points out that he was slow of speech before God called him, and he was slow of speech after God called him. And sometimes we wonder, God, if you're calling me to this, why haven't you equipped me in how you want me to be and how I want to be equipped? It's because if Moses was a really good communicator, he might have never listened to the Lord. Right. And so because Moses didn't have confidence to speak, he had to go away and say, God, I don't know what to say. What should I say? And then God would speak to him. So sometimes your insecurity is the very thing that qualifies you to be used. Yeah, this is better than y'all are letting me know it is. This is some good stuff up here. Then Moses, he said this. He says, pardon your servant, Lord, but please just send someone else. Just please send somebody else. I don't even want to do this. He tried to get out of it. He tried to stay attached to the things that were holding him back. But God, every time when he responded to Moses, not in who Moses was, but in who God was. And he says, tell them that I am sent you. That I am, all that you need. I am blank. Whatever you want to put in the blank, that's who God is. Tell them I am sent you. He said, Moses, I know you're overwhelmed because you don't know how to speak. But he said, who formed the mouth of man? I took the dirt of the earth and I formed it into a fashion, and I made your mouthpiece. I made you who you are for a reason. He answered in who he was. And then God asked him this crazy question. Moses is standing there complaining, afraid, overwhelmed, insecure. And God says to Moses, Moses, what's in your hand? And Moses says, my staff, a walking stick. And God says, okay, throw it down. So Moses I don't have time to preach this, but I'm going to try. Moses throws it down, and the Bible says that the staff turned into a snake. And then Moses reached his hand out and took the snake, and it turned back into a stick. And God said, okay, I've given you a miracle. I've given you a magic trick to show Pharaoh that I am is with you. And you see, if I was Moses, I would have been a little frustrated. Because what I would have wanted was for God to have this mighty army of chariots appear behind me. But God said, what's in your hand? And God will take something that's already in your possession and turn it into something to provide a way for you. And what we want God to do is for him to provide this big thing that we don't yet have. But all he's saying is, baby, what's in your hand? What are you good at? What do you got? What can you do on your own? And I'll take that thing and I will use that little insignificant thing and I will allow you to do something miraculous with it. That very staff is the thing that parted the Red Sea, and it was already in his hand the whole time. And you see, the things in your life God has already placed inside of you for a reason, because he has something big for you. He has something mighty for you. He has something that he wants to accomplish in your life. But what you have to do is you have to say no more. No more. I'm not going to allow this to hold me down and to stop me. I'm not going to allow these things to hold me back, but I'm going to tear them out and I'm going to pour them down. And I'm going to say, God, if you are with me, who can be against me? Come on, stand and worship the Lord. God, if you are with me, who can be against me? God, if I should not fear anyone if you are on my side. Lord, you are the one that makes me brave. So church, take some time this morning and say, God, make me brave. Don't let me live in insecurity. Don't let me live in fear, but let me walk in confidence in you. Come on, church, tell them this morning.